Welcome to Alfred Kazin Notes, a place where literature, ideas, and the minds of great writers come alive. Let's explore the thoughts behind the words.
It's great to be here, Sarah.
So, I want to start with a question for you, the listener, a really unsettling one. Are we forever chained to the crimes of our ancestors?
Oh, wow.
I mean, think about it. Does the blood spilled centuries ago inherently demand, fresh blood today?
Well, we like to think of history as a closed book, Sarah. A
Mhm.
series of clean dates and dusty events that we can just safely analyze from a distance.
Right, completely detached.
Exactly. But the psychology of the blood curse, this terrifying idea that guilt is inherited and must be violently purged, it's a ghost that absolutely refuses to stay buried.
It really does.
It haunts the edges of human civilization, just waiting for the right moment to strike.
And to understand how that ghost operates, we don't start with cobblestones and muskets and the French aristocracy.
No, we don't.
We have to look at you, the listener, right now, navigating the digital silos of 2025. Why does the concept of a bloodthirsty mob feel so intimately, unsettlingly relevant to us today?
Because the underlying psychological mechanism of the mob hasn't changed a fraction of an inch. Only the technology has evolved.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that's a huge claim.
Well, when we examine the concept of political cleansing, we're looking directly at the binary logic of the crowd. To the mob, you are either perfectly, unquestionably pure, or...
Or you are marked for destruction.
Exactly. There's no middle ground. There's no grace period. You are an ally or you are an infection.
Wait, but individuals within a mob don't usually see themselves as villains, right? I mean, they see themselves as the ultimate arbiters of justice.
Right.
So how does an entire society convince itself that mass rapid-fire condemnation is somehow like an egalitarian pursuit?
By redefining justice as a matter of industrial efficiency.
Yeah.
Think about the ultimate tool of cancellation in the world we're exploring in this deep dive, the national razor,
The guillotine.
the guillotine. It was pitched to the public as a machine designed for mass, painless, equal death. It didn't care if you were a corrupt king or a starving peasant.
The blade fell at the exact same speed.
Exactly, Sarah. Now, map that psychological framework onto our modern digital landscape. Our digital tribunals operate on the exact same condemn and discard mechanism.
Right. I mean, the way social media algorithms literally weaponize human psychology. They don't just passively reflect our outrage, they actively engineer it.
They feed on it.
Yes, they operate by rewarding high arousal negative emotions. Nuance doesn't go viral, but public execution does.
It's a spectacle.
It is. The internet functions as this massive decentralized tribunal that constantly demands fresh sacrifices just to satisfy a collective performative outrage.
And the engine powering both the revolutionary tribunal and the modern algorithm is something called the law of the suspected.
Oh, that's a chilling phrase.
It is, because when a society becomes obsessed with absolute purity, innocence is no longer a valid defense. In fact, claiming you are innocent becomes an act of treason against the prevailing narrative.
Because if you say you are innocent, you are implying the mob is wrong. And the mob can never be wrong.
Exactly. You become guilty by association, by your heritage, or simply by the fact of your birth. The burden of proof just vanishes.
So let's pull the listener directly into the visceral reality of that terror. I want you, listening right now, to imagine for a moment that you are the target.
Put yourself right in the crosshairs.
Yes, you are a man named Charles Darnay. You left a life of comfort to return to a country that has descended into absolute bloody madness purely because you were trying to save an old servant.
A noble gesture.
Right, and you believe your own rational innocence and your good intentions will act as a shield.
But the second you cross the border, that shield shatters. The rules of reality have been completely suspended.
Yeah.
The atmosphere you step into is thick with this suffocating, terrifying condition described as universal watchfulness.
Universal watchfulness. God, every town gate you pass through is another heavy iron door locking behind you.
Locking you in.
And the sensory details are overwhelming. You are stopped 20 times a day. Red-capped patriots with muskets, smelling of cheap wine and rank tobacco, they wake you up in the middle of the night just to demand your papers.
You aren't treated as a citizen anymore.
No, you are escorted like a caged animal, handed over from guard to guard. And then a stolid officer at the barrier drops the hammer. He says, "Immigrants have no rights."
Immigrants have no rights. That phrase is a legal death sentence, Sarah.
It really is.
Before you even see the city walls of Paris, your humanity has been legally erased. You are no longer a person, you are a category.
Which begs a massive question, Michael. If the air is that thick with paranoia and crowds are already screaming down with the emigrants in the streets,
Right.
why wouldn't you just turn the carriage around? Why keep riding toward the center of the nightmare?
What's fascinating here is the tragic psychological trap of the rational mind. You think, well, I haven't done anything wrong. Once I stand before a judge, once I lay out the logical facts of my case, reason will prevail.
You assume the system still uses logic.
Exactly. But it doesn't. It runs entirely on the raw, kinetic emotion of the crowd. You are trying to play a careful game of chess while the person sitting across from you is pouring gasoline on the board and lighting a match.
And that fire needs an outlet. So the trap snaps shut and you are thrown into prison in secret.
In solitary confinement.
Yeah. Let's examine what the belly of the beast actually looks like, because the contrast in this narrative is enough to give you whiplash. Let's talk about the horrific reality of the grindstone.
Grindstone. It is one of the most chilling physical manifestations of mob mentality ever recorded.
It's the engine room of hell, Michael.
It really is. It is an engine of pure violence set up in a courtyard. You look out a prison window and see a throng of men and women turning this massive, double-handled grindstone in the dark.
They are sharpening hatchets, bayonets, and broadswords. The physiological frenzy is terrifying.
It's pure bloodlust.
These people are stripped to the waist, slick with sweat and covered in gore. They are devilishly decorated with the torn lace and blood-stained silk of the aristocrats they've just butchered in the streets.
Just absolute savagery.
And they are dropping blood and cheap wine onto the turning stone, sending this screaming storm of red sparks up into the night sky.
In that courtyard, individual identity has been completely obliterated. There are no individuals anymore, only the roaring singular beast of the mob.
Right.
But the true psychological whiplash comes when you turn away from that window and walk deeper into the interior of La Force prison.
It's intensely jarring. You expect screaming, weeping, chaos, but instead you get a polite, courtly bow.
A bow.
Yes. You are led down dark, filthy corridors smelling of foul sleep, and suddenly doors open into a low, vaulted chamber. The prisoners, these spectral men and women of the high aristocracy, they rise to greet you with perfect, obsolete courtesies.
They offer engaging graces, as if you've just arrived at a high society dinner party, standing amidst absolute, inappropriate squalor.
It's like a macabre waiting room.
Exactly. They politely refer to solitary confinement as being in secret, murmuring their commiserations with soft, compassionate voices.
At first glance, it feels like mass delusion. Like, are they just completely detached from reality? Have their minds snapped?
It took me a second to realize that etiquette isn't delusion, it's armor.
Armor. That makes so much sense.
It's a highly sophisticated defense mechanism. How do you hold on to your humanity when the world outside has explicitly declared you vermin?
You cling to your manners.
Right. Out in the courtyard, the grindstone is turning. Inside, they are bowing and curtsying, using their manners as a psychological bulwark against the encroaching abyss. If they give up their dignity, the mob has already killed them.
But the mob didn't just wake up one morning deciding to sharpen swords in a courtyard and slaughter polite aristocrats. Vengeance on this apocalyptic scale requires a multi-generational catalyst.
It has to build up.
It does. And to understand their absolute suspension of mercy, we have to pull a soot-stained journal out of a hidden chimney in Bastille Cell 105.
This is where the narrative rips the floorboards out from under us, Sarah. We learned that the madness of the mob wasn't born in a vacuum. It was forged by decades of unspeakable, systemic cruelty.
Generational trauma.
Exactly. A doctor, secretly imprisoned for 18 years to keep him quiet, wrote a testament in scrapings of soot and his own blood.
Just think about the psychological toll of 18 years in solitary confinement. He forgot his own name. He only knew himself as 105 North Tower.
And that journal details the horrific crimes of your ancestors, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Twin brothers, nobles of immense arrogance and unchecked power, they abducted a young peasant girl purely for their own vile amusement.
It's sickening.
They assaulted her, driving her into a shattered, irrecoverable madness.
And when her teenage brother tracked them down to save her, armed with nothing but desperate courage, one of the nobles casually ran him through with a sword.
Just slaughtered him.
Yeah. And as that boy lay dying on the cold floor, he forced his failing hand to draw a cross of blood in the air. With his final breath, he summoned the entire family line to answer for these crimes. He cursed your bloodline to the last generation.
But the sister of those victims survived. She grew up in the shadows, her trauma calcifying over decades into pure, unadulterated hatred.
She becomes Madame Defarge.
Yes, Madame Defarge sits in her wine shop, knitting. But she isn't making garments, she is knitting a registry of death. Every single stitch is a name marked for the guillotine.
It's so methodical.
It is. When her own husband shows a brief flicker of pity for the innocent people caught in this sprawling web of revenge, she delivers a terrifying absolute. He says, "Tell wind and fire where to stop, but don't tell me."
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting because I have to challenge you on this, Michael.
Go for it.
I struggle with calling her a monster. Isn't she just the perfectly logical, inevitable result of untreated historical trauma? I mean, when a ruling class spends generations crushing people into the dirt, stripping them of everything they love, shouldn't they expect that eventually the crushed will rise up and bite back?
Look, her suffering was entirely real, Sarah, and entirely unjust. But her response demonstrates how the pursuit of absolute justice can morph into absolute evil.
How so?
She has ceased to be human and has become the national razor incarnate. The mob doesn't distinguish between the guilty ancestor who held the sword and the innocent descendant who had nothing to do with it.
The blood is the same.
The blood is the same, therefore the guilt is the same. She proves that victims of severe oppression, when given absolute power and fueled by unhealed trauma, can become the most ruthlessly efficient oppressors imaginable.
So the systemic momentum of death locks onto you. The net finally closes. The trial is a complete sham, overseen by a jury of blood-soaked patriots like Jacques III, a cannibal-looking man who literally sucks his fingers in eager anticipation of the day's executions.
It's grotesque.
You are condemned. The blade falls in 24 hours. There is no legal recourse, no logical argument, no plea for mercy that can save you.
Which poses the ultimate philosophical challenge of this deep dive. When an entire society is trapped in a death spiral of blood paying for blood, what force is actually powerful enough to jam the gears of that machine?
How do you stop it?
Yeah, how do you stop a system that demands infinite retribution?
The answer we find defies all the binary logic of the mob. It's the concept of resurrection. And it comes from the most unlikely source, an Englishman who is the spitting image of the condemned man.
A doppelganger.
Yes,
Yeah.
a man who has lived a wasted, cynical, deeply depressed life. He's brilliant, but he's a drunk. He's consumed by self-loathing and genuinely believes he is of no use to anyone. But he harbors a pure, unrequited love for the condemned man's wife.
And in the shadow of the guillotine, he realizes something profound. He realizes that the only way to cheat the apparatus of death is to feed himself into it willingly, taking the place of the man she loves. If we connect this to the bigger picture, he operates on the radical logic of giving life, which completely short-circuits the mob's logic of taking life to balance the scales.
Does giving up your life mean you threw it away, or is it the only way to actually make it mean something permanent? Because the execution of this plan plays out like a breathless heist, but with the highest possible spiritual stakes.
It's incredibly tense.
He uses a spy to gain access to the prison cell. He drubs you, Charles Darnay. As you lose consciousness, he forces a rapid change of clothes, switching your boots, your cravats, tying back his own hair to match yours perfectly.
A complete identity swap.
You are carried out of the prison unconscious, masquerading as a swooning visitor overcome by grief. And the cynical Englishman remains behind in the dark cell, waiting for the guards to call his assumed name.
The paradox of redemption here is staggering. The mob operates entirely on subtraction, removing people to purify the nation. But this man operates on addition through sacrifice. He finds absolute meaning, a sudden, profound clarity of purpose by willingly laying down his existence for another. He takes a wasted, broken life and, in its final hours, turns it into a masterpiece of grace.
It totally redefines what a legacy is. He walks out to the tumbrils, the death carts. He stands among the 52 people waiting to be slaughtered that day. And a young, terrified seamstress, a girl who knows she is entirely innocent but cannot escape the grinding machine of the state. She notices something.
She sees through the disguise.
She realizes he is not the man he appears to be. She sees what he is doing.
And in the face of imminent death, what does she ask him? She asks if she can hold his hand.
I am not afraid, she says, but I am little and weak, and it will give me more courage. And he holds her hand.
It's beautiful.
They ride through the jeering, screaming, bloodthirsty crowds of Paris together. And the narrative describes his face as the most peaceful ever beheld in that city. He looks sublime and prophetic.
Because radical, selfless love is the ultimate rebellion against a society built on death. Madame Defarge and the Revolutionary Tribunal believe they hold ultimate power because they possess the capacity to kill.
But they don't.
No, the act of substitution breaks the ledger entirely. The cycle of historical vengeance demands that the descendant pays for the sins of the father. But you cannot collect a debt of blood when someone else has already paid it with love.
It cancels the debt.
Exactly. He goes to the blade repeating the words, "I am the resurrection and the life." In a city that has abolished religion and replaced the cross with the guillotine, he embodies the ultimate spiritual triumph.
We started this journey looking at the digital tribunals of today, the performative outrage, the endless demand to cancel, ruin, and cleanse. We followed that dark human impulse back to the blood-soaked streets in Paris, to the horrific turning of the grindstone, and the cold, unyielding registry of Madame Defarge.
We saw exactly what happens when a society elevates vengeance above all else.
But we also saw the subversive power of stepping into the breach. It forces us to realize something deeply uncomfortable about how we view ourselves. We spend so much of our time arguing about whether we belong to the category of the victim or the oppressor.
We obsess over who is pure and who is guilty.
But we rarely consider the third role in the crowd, the quiet bystander, the individual with the power to intervene, to absorb the blow instead of passing it on, and to shatter the cycle of retribution simply by refusing to participate in the violence.
That's the real challenge.
Look at the choices you make when the crowd demands a sacrifice. Look at what you are willing to lay down for the people you love. Ask yourself the hardest question of all. If the blade were falling tomorrow, whose place would you take?